Hello everyone, welcome to The Green Man. Hope you're all good and well. So in tonight's album review, I'm reviewing the second studio album from the melodic death metal band Moonshade, and their release As We Set the Skies Ablaze, which came out last week on Friday the 22nd of July, and the album is 9 tracks and it's 43 minutes in length. In this band we have 5 band members. We have Pedro Cuellas on guitars, Ricardo on vocals, Nuno Barbosa on keyboards and bass, Fernando Maya on drums, and Luis Diaz also on guitars. You also have a couple of guest vocal spots on this album from Sandra Oliveira, who features in Artemis and final track A Treatise of Human Nature, and Sofia Becco, who features on the 6th track, The Antagonist. So with all that out of the way, I'd also just like to say it's the first melodic death metal album I think I've reviewed on the channel since Amorphis' Halo, which was really quite some time ago. For me, it's kind of unusual because I really like to scope out new melodeath bands and get into melodic death metal, so it's kind of strange now to think it's all this time since I've reviewed a melodeath album, but here we go. And, you know, at first I wasn't sure about this album. I thought, you know what, this sounds very familiar. It reminded me quite a lot of the band Blood Red Hourglass, who I really like, but the album just sounded like, you know, it had kind of familiar melodic death style guitar progressions, and I was thinking, is this going to be just me sort of, you know, thinking, yeah, I kind of feel like I've heard this a bit before. But the more I listen to this album, and this is unusual for melodeath, I usually get into melodeath pretty much on the first listen. But with this album, it's taken me a few listens to really get into it. And I think that's a really good thing, because I now think I'm starting to appreciate this album more for what it is. And it is genuinely a pretty interesting melodeath album, but you just have to give it multiple spins, I think, to get the dynamics, to sort of appreciate the album a bit more. But it's actually quite an interesting, pretty well-structured album on the whole. And I think, you know, going into the tracks a bit more, I'll talk a bit more, but I think where the album got really good, really interesting was when they introduced the guest vocal spots on the album, with Sandra Oliveira coming in for Artemis, and when Sofia Becco featured on The Antagonist. For me, they just added a new flavour that worked really well with this band and this album, and I almost wouldn't have minded them being on much of the rest of the album, because I thought when they featured, the album was really fantastic. You know, that said, I still liked a lot of the other tracks on the album. As I said, it's been a grower. This album has grown on me over time. Epitaph kind of plunges you into what you can expect. You get the tremolo style guitaring, really good actually harmonised keyboards and guitars throughout the album at lots of different moments. I liked Valley of Dying Stars quite a lot on the album. Everlasting Horizons, perhaps a favourite track of mine, if not the favourite on this one, which offered more in the way of variations. I thought really good kind of build-ups in that track, as well as an interesting stop-start style riff that I thoroughly enjoyed in Everlasting Horizons. That is the definite mainstay track for me. I'll be returning to that track a lot in the future. Treatise of Human Nature was actually a welcome closing track. Normally, you know, if an album has quite fast tempo, you know, I usually like it to end, but for this, I would usually like to end it on a high with, you know, something aggressive again. But actually for this album, I thought with the atmosphere, this style of closing track was a bit of a ballad with Sandra Oliveira's vocals again. I thought really suited this album down to a T, and I really enjoyed the final track on this album actually. It was really quite, you know, really quite a powerful closing track. So where does that leave me with this album, with my final score as well? So if I was scoring this album after the first or second listen, I think I would be giving this album probably like maybe a 6 out of 10. But after, you know, after quite a few more listens, and after realising that actually there is some great stuff on here that will just maybe take a little bit of time to grow on you, I'm giving this album a 7.5 out of 10. That is where I think I am at this point in time with Moonshade's As We Set the Skies Ablaze. So do let me know in the comments if you heard this album yet. You know, do you like melodeath? If you do, I think you will probably almost definitely enjoy this album. And, you know, let me know if you have heard the album, what are your favourite tracks on it, which ones, you know, do you think you will be, maybe songs you're going to be going back to later on. And maybe do let me know any other melodeath releases that have come out this year. It feels like I'm a bit kind of short on the melodeath front this year, and given that I'm a big melodeath fan, do drop in some melodeath suggestions for me in the comments, because I would really appreciate that. Anyway, as always, everybody do drop a like and subscribe if you're new to the channel. I do reviews, rankings, and occasionally sci-fi, fantasy and horror content too. Otherwise, for me, have great evenings everyone. Until next time, it's bye for now.